Okay, and we are back. Thank you, Mother. I think when we were having our weather conversation earlier, it angered the weather gods. Kind of nasty outside where I am right now at the moment in northern New Jersey. But at any rate, we are back, hopefully for the duration. But if you are or weren't on the original stream or what have you, this is Shifting Lanes Garage, a live show, a podcast. I have with me one of my business partners, Hanson, and our extremely special guest, Jack from JAX Automotive, with us. Gentlemen, the power outage not only interrupted the stream, I have completely forgotten what we were talking about prior to that. But at any rate, I think we were talking about reviews and review styles and things like that. And
Oh yeah.
it, like I said, it is, and I guess this kind of leads me into like our. If you watch this stream, you'll know that we like to ask our guests a series of questions before we really dive into too much. But as far as different styles of YouTubers, how different people review different types of things and stuff like that. So, Jack, real quick, when it comes to YouTube, who are the YouTubers specifically in the car space or the automotive space that you find yourself watching, or that you would consider a quote unquote favorite, or something to that effect?
For me, I'd say the people that I probably consume the most content of, specifically on YouTube, is probably the Throttle House guys. I watch a lot of Throttle House videos, and then a lot of Haggerty's videos with JC Camisa.
Those are great.
Um, Yeah, and I'll pretty much watch anything with Chris Harris. I think Chris Harris is maybe the best automotive presenter in the world right now. I mean, I could watch Chris Harris endlessly because, I know we might have lost a couple people, but you were making the point about how some people can just be so excited, right, about like almost anything. And I feel like Chris Harris could be driving a Toyota Corolla and somehow make it like exciting or something, or have, these crazy insights or whatever, because not only is he an amazing, automotive journalist, he's an amazing driver as well. So I probably watch those the most. I definitely have a bias towards production quality because I would say my ultimate sort of hobby and passion is filmmaking, and then cars are like number two. I know a lot of people are always surprised about that when they start getting into the business side of things with me, but I nerd out about filmmaking, cameras, movies, and television more than anything. And then cars are like my second hobby, and that's what kind of created my different social channels, was ways to practice filmmaking. And so whenever I see someone doing that, like the Throttle House guys, or what Haggerty's been doing lately, their production value and stuff is super high, and Camisa's an amazing presenter. I just have a deep appreciation for that as an automotive enthusiast, but then also as a big camera filmmaking nerd too, because I know what it takes to create something of that level of quality, and it really impresses me that those guys are out there doing it.
I 100% agree with you with like Camisa and stuff, like to such an extent that it's like it feels like the whatever you want to call it new Top Gear's thing, right? Like he's doing the review with the production behind it, but with the personality that, for lack of a better way of putting it, that made Top Gear such an enjoyable car show to watch, even if you weren't into cars. Camisa is he's right. I don't If he's on it, I watch it. He's
Yeah.
phenomenal at what he does.
He's super smart too. I mean, when he does the deep dives on the old cars and stuff, like his depth of knowledge combined with his driving skill, combined with his, abilities as a presenter and stuff. I mean, that's why I really like him and Chris Harris a lot, because I feel like they're sort of that total package. And they bring so much enjoyment to the hobby, because I want to not only be entertained, but I know like there's like literally when he does the Icon show or whatever, I'm gonna walk away from that and I know I'm gonna learn something that I had no idea about before, even if it's about like Corvettes. I love Corvettes, like my favorite car. And then he'll say something and I'll be like, I did not know that, and it's just so fun to learn new things like that.
Yeah, I find a lot of I find I'm in. He's one of the channels I watch in the automotive space where I'll be end up getting inspired because
Hmm.
a lot of our content now is short form, so it's hard to condense like a 15-20 minute video into a minute and a half. But like you take that one little tiny thing, like I think it was I was watching. It was the BMW, the video he did on the BMW M1, and how the iconic M colors came from the BMW logo, which is the flag of Bavaria, and the red came up from a sponsorship deal that they had with Texaco, and that ended up not coming to fruition, but they just kept it. And then the purple was just what's blue and red? Purple. Like little stuff like that that is just like it adds so much and you're not even realizing it at the moment when you're watching it, right? Like those little tidbits of information where you're like, huh, and then he's already talking about something else, but it's a true talent and it's a true writing talent, right? It's the ability to weave the main story in with these little side things that, I mean, we all can aspire to. Like, I'm not there, not going to ever say I'm there, but like, it's one of those things like, well, they did it this way. Let me try that. How would I do that? And then I ended up staring at a computer screen for like 3 hours, like, what the hell was I talking about at first? Like, I got lost in the minutia of this. What am I doing? No, I agree with you there.
Yeah, I think that's the key to like writing a successful article, doing a great video is just the art of storytelling. Hasn't really changed. The media has changed, but it's like as long as you could really storytell and Jason Camisa, Chris Harris, can do that really well. And I don't know what goes on in the background, but there's probably a lot of people that do the research as
Mhm.
well on top of like what they have written. So, and I don't know if there's a team that kind of put all of this together, but um, I think that the successful YouTubers and content creators, they really spend a lot of time in figuring out, okay, how can I tell this story? And Chad, you have started doing that for your short form stuff. It's like because all your short form stuff is like telling a story. You've got like this great nugget of information. How do I infuse comedy into it? And like how do I get people to watch up to 45 seconds and 60 seconds for that payoff? It's like how do I present like this little riddle or like pique someone's interest and then have it pay off later on. So that's always a challenge.
Thanks. Yeah, for me, it was finding, like, for me, most of my stuff, or at least the stuff that's like kind of successful, is let's just say it's a reel and it's 90 seconds. It's almost like the first 60 seconds is telling a story and then getting to the point. But you can do that in short form because it's only 90 seconds, right? Like, and even that is too much for some people. It's like, yeah, come on. But it's no, it's 100% a challenge, and but it's that sort of stuff I like, and I don't even know what the best way to describe it is, but it's like, oh, this is cool. And like my inspiration from that, and this kind of leads into the next question. My inspiration for that didn't actually come from the automotive space. It came from just good storytellers on YouTube. If you're into like cryptids and stuff like that, like Wendigoon is I'm not even into that stuff, but he's such a good storyteller that it's like, huh, I don't really care, but you have my attention. Him and like guys like the Fat Electrician and stuff like that. But it does bring me to Jack. We're car guys, but it's not our entire life, right? It's not like we go down there and it's like, nope, no car, not watching it. What do you find yourself gravitating towards? Again, same question: favorite or guys you'll watch that are content creators, but specifically not in the automotive space.
For me, I mean, that's an easy question for me because I am so into filmmaking. And so I found Peter McKinnon years ago when he was sort of on the come up. And he's a Canadian YouTuber who started really pushing filmmaking and photography. And he inspired me. None of the stuff that I've done, making the channel, teaching myself to edit, any of that stuff, would I be 1/10 as far along as I am on that journey had I not found his channel. I just gravitated to it. I loved his personality. I loved his delivery style. He was truly talented as a filmmaker and a photographer. And I was just sitting here looking at this guy going, he just gave you that sense of like if he can do it, I can do it. Like we had the same passions and things, and so that inspired me. And so pretty much everything I watch has some connection to that, some type of filmmaking or photography. So some of Peter's friend, like Matty Hapoya, and then old school vloggers like Casey Neistat. But Casey Neistat was like a filmmaker. Like he started as a filmmaker, and that's why if you watch a Casey Neistat vlog, his storytelling is just impeccable. He's got an amazing sense of story, and he does it all very seemingly off the cuff, right? It seems like it's just sort of manifesting as it goes, but like it's really very like crafted and smart and intelligent. And I love that. I love that kind of stuff, and I love that watching Peter's channel evolve over time, and now he just kind of does whatever he wants. He's got 5 or 6 million, subscribers now, and he kind of does, rustic outdoorsy stuff. Like he's got his own product shop and all that. But it makes me happy. And I got to meet him last year when he was in Atlanta for a knife show, selling some of his products. And I literally told my wife, I was like, Peter McKinnon's in Atlanta. I'm going to go buy a ticket to a knife show and go meet him. And she was like, why are you going to a knife show? And I said, I don't know. I don't care about knives. I just want to meet Peter. And I went down there and shook his hand, said, hey, and he was just as nice in person as he is in the videos, and talked to his editor, Kirk, for a while. And, it was just one of those kind of full circle moments where I was like, YouTube, he started me on this journey, and now YouTube has brought me here, and meeting him. Just like when, Hanson, I know you and I were talking a second ago when the power went out about some of the events that we've been on and stuff. And I'm like, you go to this event and some of these automotive channels that are quite large, and you're sitting there standing right next to them filming when the Toyota Land Cruiser came out. That event was huge, and there were so many people there. And I was like, man, the Hamilton nerd in me is like, I'm in the room where it happens. Like, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is really cool. And, it was all started by watching channels like Peter, back in the day. It was really cool.
Yeah.
No.
Like let me add one thing, because I discovered, I know that I went through this question last week because it was my first time returning back to the show. But I wanted to mention, because this adds on to like, how do we make like good stories and good content. There's this YouTube channel called I think it's like, the guy's name's like Sean Overton or something. But the whole premise is, it's not automotive, but the whole premise is that he bought like 300 something acres of wasteland in like West Texas, and this is like just desert, like nothing lives there, and he wanted to turn it into a desert forest. And so the storytelling part is like, he has this really strong premise, what seems impossible, of like, why would you, one, spend a lot of money buying empty land that you can't grow anything on, but you're going to use like, technology or like civil engineering knowledge or whatever to kind of like make it into a like living like desert forest. So it's kind of like, it's a really strong premise. And I ended up watching like his entire video, and like he's got like a whole series of it, and it's like the whole video, the whole time you're just watching this guy doing like manual labor and talking about very mundane things, about like, I should dig this hole here, place this cacti here. But it's like, that really strong premise that he begins with every episode, that you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna watch the whole 30 minutes of this, and then I'm gonna watch another one. But it's like, it's one part of the storytelling where it's like, you've got like this really strong premise, and I want to watch it all the way through, because I have a feeling there's going to be a payoff where like he did in fact turn this massive desolate wasteland into something that is much more valuable and like more thriving, so. But anyway,
Yeah, I find there's a couple channels like that I like. Colin Furze, he's this British civil engineer, and I came across his channel because he literally dug. Well, first he did an underground steel bunker in his backyard, and we're talking like English backyard, so it's not like a ton of space. And he put this bunker, and it's got power, it's got TV, it's a great man cave. That's, well, I guess kind of a cave because it's underground, right? And then that was so successful that he literally is now just digging a tunnel network under his property. So he has this tunnel going from his house. So he walks into like his pantry in his house, goes down a ladder, walks. I don't know. It's got to be like 20 or 30 feet. It's not a long distance at all to his work shed. And then that was so successful. So now he's doing a tunnel to the front of his property, and he's now going to have a like. You drive into his driveway, and it comes down. So he has an underground garage. It's you wouldn't think about just watching a guy dig, but like it brings out the kid in me, right? Like, what did we do as kids? It's like we had this, you just dug holes for no apparent reason, or you tried to make a tunnel, or you built a brick, like you just built stuff. Like it's just such a crazy channel. And then the other channel is, I guess.
Have you ever seen those TikToks where they do that? Have you seen the TikToks where like some wilderness person will like dig an underground dwelling in the woods and like using sticks and stuff?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Dude, I went down one of those rabbit holes and I was like, what am I even watching? But I was like obsessed.
100%. I've seen like, and like, there's I know a bunch of them are coming out of like Russia somewhere, and then there's a couple in like Southeast Asia somewhere, and it's just like, this is, I mean, I've spent, oh, what's that? That's kind of cool. 4 hours later, it's I should really go to bed.
That's right.
It's
I crushed at least like 30 minutes to an hour just watching this woman make an underground fireplace. Like she dug the thing, but then she like dug out a fireplace and was like hanging a kettle, and it was all just dirt and sticks, but she like made this fully functional fireplace. And I was like, I couldn't even dig a hole without it collapsing on itself. And then she's underground making a fireplace. And I was like, what is this?
That primitive, well, I guess primitive, right? Like it's of dwelling building or the fireplace, like you said, or like all that sort of like, it kind of starts survival, but it's not, right? It's some of this stuff is elaborate as hell, man. And it's like,
yeah,
I mean, kudos to these people because they're making, these videos, and it's just time lapse. Like a lot of them, they don't even speak. It's just it's time lapse, or it's just like, hey, I'm building a staircase. It's like that amazes me. Is like when they sit here and they have basically just a primitive, like not a shovel, but like almost like I don't even know what it is, like a hoe, and they do a staircase, and the rise and the rake is perfect. It's like. And you didn't measure anything. How did you do that? Like, it's just, it blows my mind, like, how these people are so skilled at something. And you see it with the trades here, right? Like, when a guy's like, when a mason has to trim a brick or something like that, and he just scribe, dink, and it's ready. It's like, whoa. If I tried that, it would just be a pile of dirt. How did you, like, it's so insane. But I think a lot of that stuff and a lot of that success of all this stuff, like I said, one of the channels I watched, the guy bought, it's Matt Carricker, but he bought this quote unquote mansion on the top of a hill in like Bernie, Texas, or what have you. And the place hadn't been touched in 20 years. So it's basically this massive gut. And then he redid the whole thing and he's doing a lot of the work, but obviously contractors are doing a lot of the work. I was like, man, I'm watching you build your dream house. And like, I should be jealous that this isn't me, but continue. It's like this old house for our generation kind of a deal. And it's like I said, like YouTube and like the content that comes out on YouTube and the style and the people and like just how many creative, smart people that you would have never seen or known anything about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, as YouTube becomes more and more the quote unquote traditional viewing experience, right? It's, I was again listening to a podcast the other day, and they were sitting here and they're talking about how, I think, what was it? Some traditional news service was going after Mr. Beast for like exploiting, I don't know what it was, but he was doing a charity for like the blind or something. I forget what the actual charity was for. And it's like, you're exploiting this. It's like, how's that any different than the 11 o'clock news talking about this stuff? And it's like, we'll tell you more right after this commercial break. And, it's like all these major,
that's true.
All these major networks they see the writing on the wall. They're terrified. I have a buddy of mine who works in post production for a studio that does TV, and they're like, "Yeah, we got a few more years of this, and then we got to figure it out, whether it be streaming service or
No.
this, that," and like, it's just not. It's not. I don't watch normal TV, pretty much at all, like ever anymore. Like I'll watch the news here and there, but like most of it is YouTube now, and I'm not saying that to self. It's like, hey, we're on YouTube. Our stuff's better than normal. I'm not saying it to be like that. It's just that that's where the interesting content is, and
Well, it's like you go back to the YouTubers you follow. I mean, I wake up every morning and while I'm making my coffee, I put on Philip DeFranco's news show and just watch, what kind of pop culture goings ons and news, and he'll talk about world and local and stuff like that. And he just is a very middle of the road kind of guy and just says, here's some stories that you might be interested in. And that's kind of what I want in my morning. Like, I just want to know, what are some major things that are happening around the country and world without, having to worry that there's going to be a ton of, fluff or filter bias, whatever. I just want someone to kind of hand it to me and go, here you go. Here's some news stories. What do you think? And so every morning while I'm having my coffee, I just get my phone out, prop it on the counter, and just sit there and make coffee and watch the news and people get ready for school and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of going back to your point. It's sort of like what YouTube and social media in general, but what YouTube has sort of become, it's become this sort of like in the moment news, entertainment, like live streaming, whatever it is you want. It sort of becomes all things to all people. And I think that's interesting. And I know, Hanson, like some of the events that we've gone to, when you see all these different people that are there for the same car, the same brand, the same whatever, and you just sort of think, man, all of these people have their own style, their own presentation, their own audience, their own like kind of way of doing things. And I think that's like really cool. Like YouTube sort of democratized the access to stuff, right? For better or worse. I mean, obviously we've seen it harnessed for negative purposes too, but like, trying to stay positive here on y'all's show. Like, I think in the automotive space, it's fun to see other people's perspective, but then other people's audience. When I was at the LA Auto Show, I bumped into Miles from Miles Per Hour and Mobile Mama, and watching them kind of tag team and work like around a car was like so much fun, because like my wife and I do it now, like, in reviews, and we just do our own total thing, and it's just sort of become our habit. But watching other people do their thing is like fun. And then you and I got to do that when we went to the Kona drive, and we got to like high five, tag team in and out of the car, and then like kind of turn on our personality and do our thing and stuff. And I was like, that's just so fun to kind of sit by and watch a friend kind of just become their YouTube self,
Yeah.
yeah. It's fun. It's funny you say YouTube self. It's like I find when like I'm doing a vlog or something, it's not that I'm fake or I'm not being me. It's just a bigger, more, for better or worse, a more pronounced version of myself, because you have to come at YouTube and content in general with a certain level of energy. Some people have found success being very monotone and kind of going through that and stuff like, but like most have this crazy edit. It's like, hi guys, welcome to the show. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm not saying I'm, a hyperactive kid who's had one too many pixie sticks, but like, you have to have that energy, and it's, we're all on the wrong side of 35. It's
I'm almost on the wrong side of 45.
Like
on the downhill, baby.
Well, there. I mean, I last year was 40 for me, so it's like, but yeah. So it's such a fascinating subject, YouTube in general, just because, like you said, there's just so many. You could watch 10 videos of someone doing a Kona, like you said, and each video will be different and have its own little thing that keeps you, well, maybe not 10 videos of the Kona if you're like me, but like, you understand what I'm trying to say.
But Hanson, do you ever like study? Like, I find myself now more I'll watch a couple of channels I like, and then I'll watch a couple that either are random or like of people that I don't necessarily follow, but I'm curious, and I'll sort of like, but have big followings, right? They've had success. They've got like a big audience, and I'll kind of study it and be like, what are they doing? Like, how's that working out for them? Like what are some of the techniques they're using to hold the audience, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, Reels, like whatever.
Yeah, it's always like I'm always studying that and like understanding what works, and usually like my biggest inspiration comes from, you know, outside of the automotive sphere, because it's like, and I still do, watch folks still in the automotive sphere to get like inspiration there. Um, but it's like sometimes it's almost like almost the same. The opinions are slightly different, but like the facts and the figures are all the same. So it's like it can be kind of repetitive that way. But from outside of the automotive sphere, that's where you kind of get like the storytelling, the pacing of things. But yeah, no, that's I lost my train of thought. But yeah, like just like learning from other YouTubers. That's from the non-automotive sphere. That's kind of like where I get the most
Mhm.
benefit, and trying to apply that in my videos.
We've seen the
But
influence too of like short form, I think, has I've noticed that like I feel more, review videos tend to be a little longer, right? Like we got a lot we're trying to pack
yeah,
in and stuff like that. And I've noticed that if I really try to make some quick edits, quick cuts, add a little joke or a blurb or something at the beginning, it almost feels like you have to provide a little bit more of that engagement like early on, because the audience is used to opening something like TikTok and just getting served up a
yeah.
compelling incentive to keep watching within the first 1 or 2 seconds, like quite literally 1 or 2 seconds.
Yeah, and right. That's part of the art of storytelling too. Just to kind of like expand on that point that we talked about earlier, and it it sometimes it sucks that it like you kind of have to have like that high energy thing, but not always the case, because like my tone of voice and my reels is totally different than your tone of
Hmm.
voice in your reels. It's like it's a totally different kind of feel, but like you can there's ways to make both styles interesting. And like sometimes because I was just at this other event yesterday, and we were talking about like the short form stuff, and I do like my thing is like the whole guess the car thing, right? Because it's like it actually it starts with me saying, okay, it's time to guess the car, SUV, or truck, and then the rest of the reel is just silence. It's like sometimes you hear my jacket rustling,
Yeah.
and sometimes people have commented, hey, breathe a bit quieter, because it was picking up my breathing. But I thought that the concept of guess the car is interesting, because it's like in a sea of reels and TikToks where it's all very high energy, it's all very music, and then you roll into one where it's like I just talk in a monotone way, and then silence for about 60 seconds. It's like that's the one that stands out. But that's just my theory, right?
Yeah.
And then the other benefit to that is, and this is a benefit that I did not anticipate, was that I, from that alone, I disassociate branding with the perceived quality of the car.
Mm.
So sometimes people think that, oh, the Mazda is actually a BMW, or vice versa. And people don't really um, like they pay attention to the quality first, and then like they think something is something completely different, and it makes you question like, should you really be buying luxury cars? Because you'd be spending a lot more money, and you could find something that's like as good, if not even better, like with another brand. So
I think that branding and perception too is interesting with social media becoming so ubiquitous, and I'm sure you guys know this as well. Everybody's got a hot take now, right? Like, people form these very strong opinions. We've had the privilege to go to a couple model debuts and stuff in the past year of some pretty big brands. I mean, we mentioned the Land Cruiser, earlier. And I think it's interesting how people sort of fire off these hot takes about stuff based, almost as far as I can tell, entirely on just sort of a perception of something. And then, like you were saying, when you cover up the branding or whatever, and you take away that variable, and then they're forced to make a judgment or a perception about it based on the visual, or a reduced amount of information. um, it's interesting to see how people are sort of like almost lost, right? It's like without their preconceived notion, then they don't know
yeah,
what they're supposed to think. And
right.
if they don't have that soundbite or that tidbit of information they heard somewhere, and I know some of it's valid. I mean, some of it's based on, history, but I also think it doesn't do some vehicles, it does them a disservice in the sense of like, like the Chevy Trax. I had that over the holidays, and it's just unbelievably improved from like what it was, right? Like it just went from being this sad piece of junk to being like one of the kind of best values in that class of vehicle, if not the best value. And just the number of people that would like comment, they're like, yeah, well, it's gonna break, or it's gonna fall apart, or it's a dumb Chevy, or like whatever. And I was like, yeah, but if you didn't know this was a Chevy Trax and you saw just the interior and how nicely it's designed, and the exterior, I mean, obviously it looks like their current design language, but it looks kind of cool. Like it's got kind of cool style. And I'm like, how much of what you're saying is just you're just bringing that baggage in with you? And I feel like when we
Yeah,
were younger, we used to joke about that, when you had your favorite brands and cars. But like, I'd be the first to admit, like, I was a big Corvette guy. But then, like, Ford would do something cool with the Mustang, like the GT350 or whatever. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's pretty awesome. Like it's like you would still
yeah,
admit it, right? You would still admit it. But I feel like now people are just like, no, someone told me once that I shouldn't like this brand, or
right.
with the Toyota Tacoma, they turbocharged the engine. It's gonna fail after 2,000 miles, and you're like, it's Toyota,
Yeah,
like like based on
yeah,
what.
yeah, yeah. And I actually, Toyota's benefiting a lot from that really strong brand equity.
Mm,
That reliability, and like, you know, this is something that is really hard to forecast, right? It's like these are problems in cars are something that unfortunately you discover sometimes when it's past warranty. And it's like it's hard to make that assessment, at least when we're reviewing these cars, because we only have it for like a week long, and it's like it's hard to comment on that. And it's like the comments that I see on a lot of like reels and short form stuff is just like, yeah, well, it's a Chevy or whatever, it's going to
mhm.
break, or and alternatively, it's like, well, it's a Toyota, it's going to last forever. And like the reality is like it's somewhere in between, right? For all manufacturers, like
Definitely.
stuff happens. Like first year model cars are probably going to have more recalls than like the third or fourth year version of it. And it's a tough thing to forecast. And yeah, it's unfortunate that like sometimes you have a really great car, and the past of that car brand just like haunts it, haunts every product that is coming out.
And I think
So
that's magnified thanks to social media. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like those
yeah,
reputations, for better or worse, are like magnified. And it's almost like whatever reputation a brand had, it's kind of like Land Rover, Jaguar, or something. Like, they didn't have the best reputation for reliability. But now, if anything happens, first of all, if anything happens for real, it's like super public because of social media. But then that has an order of magnitude, like a 20x multiplier because of social media, right? So it's like, oh, Jason Camisa's press card didn't work right or something. And then they're like, well, then that just extrapolates out to anything ever, and they're all going to just explode and burn to the ground. And you're like, well, no. I mean, are they as reliable as Toyota? Probably not. But like,
Yeah.
does that mean it's doom and gloom? Not necessarily either. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. What do we got going on here?
I don't know, but it's a better background.
We have captured a wild Gregson.
Oh, a Gregson appears.
Hello and welcome, Jack.
Oh, hey, nice to see you.
Nice to see you and meet you on the interwebs.
Yes. It feels like 2020 all over again.
Yes, we're rebranding to the C19 stream.
Well, yeah, you definitely win for backgrounds.
Yeah, exactly right.
I don't know, a big Georgia Bulldogs logo looming over everyone because they are the champions or the best team of the last basically like 4 or 5 years. Also very impressive. Also looks like very high quality. So I gotta hand it to you there.
Yeah. Well, that was my office is festooned in Georgia stuff all around me, and so this was a gift from my parents one Christmas. You can see UGA like up there, So yeah, the whole office is decorated in Georgia gear. It's been it's college football. You have ups and downs. I will just say it's been easy. It's been easy to be a big Georgia fan the past couple of years.
Yeah, I was gonna say so big Bama and LSU fan. Got it. Moving on. Okay, cool.
You're right.
I was gonna introduce him as like his, how like fighters and stuff have walkout music or hitters in baseball and stuff. I was gonna introduce him with "Hail to the Victors" ringing in the background, but I decided I just met this guy, probably shouldn't.
Right. Yeah, it's like a little Nick Saban logo or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Roll Tide, just like somehow green screen you with like Alabama stuff stewed behind you.
Yeah, the only team that's beaten Georgia in the past 3 years.
That's true. So what were you guys talking about right before I came on? I heard you talk about reliability and Toyota and stuff.
Oh no, we were talking about how kind of like a brand's perception kind of like haunts their product lines or boosts their product lines. So it's like
that's a very good one.
We were talking about my Guess the Car segment. Because it's like, the benefit of it is that it disassociates the brand history, the brand equity with like the actual quality of the car. So it's like sometimes they see the interior, it's like it's actually a Mazda, but they think it's like a BMW or an Audi, and then vice versa. It's like is that some luxury brand? That's like, no, it's a Hyundai.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting. That's an interesting point because entry-level car brands, and I say entry-level with big quotes because so many, like everything's expensive now, but entry-level car brands have come so far in the last 15, 20 years. It's insane, especially Hyundai. If you look at Hyundai from like a 2004, like 20 years ago, there's going to be like, wow, that thing's a big old pile of garbage. And then you look at one from today and you're just like, wow, it's the exact opposite of that. It looks like, and especially the SUVs, like the new Santa Fe just came out. I know Hanson, you're going on that launch event. Soon,
Jack's going as well.
Oh, sweet, nice.
Yeah.
So we got Jack Owens and shifting lanes going, so that's very cool. But like you look at the new Santa Fe, it looks like a baby like Land Rover.
Yeah.
You look at the Palisade, like it's very upscale. The new Tucson's like everything's upscale, and that goes across like Honda and a lot of Toyota too. It's OEMs sort of upping their game, and the perception is very interesting because of how far the entry level brands have come. And Jack, I heard you talk about like Jason Camisa and like, oh, if his press car gets like one problem, then that's like the be all end all. And I feel like that's a lot of what you see on internet forums is because you just hear sort of the screeching. You don't see like the 80 to 90% of consumers, or even maybe even a whole lot higher, 90 to 95% of consumers actually enjoying their car and actually not having a lot of problems with them. I'm a great N of one for that because I have a Volvo XC90 from 2017, and we've even had press cars from Volvo that have had issues. And I've had zero issues with the car other than a new starter was needed, a new steering angle sensor was needed, and a new O2 sensor was needed, and that's over 5 years. And that's not really that bad outside of routine maintenance. So it's still kind of a crapshoot. You know, there are Toyotas that still have lemon law stuff on it. So buy the brand you like, buy what you like, and that's why they make warranties.
Well, I thought it was interesting that I think it was JD Powers. You know, they do their owner satisfaction, right? They have their owner satisfaction, then they have their initial quality, and then they have their like reliability thing. And what was kind of wild to me is that I think in the past year, maybe it's 2023 or something, it was like most of the Stellantis brands were not doing super great in you know, reliability and stuff like that. But in initial satisfaction or owner satisfaction, they were like top 10 across the board, like Dodge, Jeep, and stuff. And so it's like clearly, yes, there is truth to both sides. There are some, you know, mechanical things that people might be slightly concerned about, but then the perception of those cars and how much the people that buy them love them, whether it's a Jeep Wrangler or a, you know, Dodge Challenger or whatever, they clearly are just absolutely nailing it with what the people that buy them want. Or to your point, I've got a 2012 Chevy Suburban, and people constantly, oh, General Motors and Chevy. Our Suburban has 175,000 miles on it. It's driven halfway across the country multiple times, and barely a problem that's cost me more than a few $100s, you know? And we've had it since 2012. So going on 12 years now. And that thing is a tank.
I mean, a lot of people miss that there are Range Rovers out there that don't have a single warranty claim on them.
Yeah.
That does exist. I guarantee it. But everyone wants to be like, oh, Range Rovers are so unreliable. They have so many problems. They're so expensive to fix. And I mean, yeah, those things are by and large very true, but you might get a good one. And we're sort of a what if society because we always buy the SUVs that no one really needs. So we're always for that what if. What if we need that room? What if we need that like extra cargo space? And like, well, what if I get that Range Rover with no warranty claims? So I mean, I'm very much of the mindset is like, if you like a car, just go buy it.
Counterpoint though, most of the problems that I've had with press cars, usually it's in a Range Rover.
It's a JLR.
Yes. So about that, let's move. So what's the next topic? Damn it, Hanson.
Although, you know what, real quick, I thought of this when you were talking about how much nicer cars are, because this was literally just dropped off in my driveway. Obviously, Nissan's been having some ups and downs, you know, recently, a little bit more downs than ups. And they just dropped off the 2024 Sentra SV. And so it's the more optioned up one, you know, and it's got like quilted stitched leather, like a stitched dash, like on the center console. It's got like fake leather stitching down the side of the console, and the window sticker 27,000. I was like, what? I'm like,
crazy.
Goodness. And it's got heated and cooled seats, sunroof, surround view. It has a surround view camera. The Odyssey Elite I just had nothing. It had a backup camera and some sensors. And that was 52.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That you can get that level of like stuff on a sub $30,000 car. Granted, it's a compact car. Sure, whatever.
But it kind of goes to the perception thing, because people are always like, no, Nissan CVT, and I'm like, look, I've been driving it for 2 days. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. I go to work, I come back. I'm not like getting on my street at home and being like, oh no, the CVT is not downshifting into my driveway. Like, you know, like
as
the commuter car, it's fine. Yeah,
I would do that. I hate CVTs with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. I would
rather have something else, but it's not.
No, of course,
it's not offending me. Like, you know, and they've done a good job of sort of hiding it now with the fake gears. You know, it'll go up and it'll fake gear swap and stuff. So
I think
Something we can all
CVTs
agree on,
have
just-
really, I think CVTs have really come a long way. Like the early, like
Mhm.
mid to late 2000s Nissan CVTs are probably like what we normally think of a CVT, but like, you know, the Hyundai CVT, the Subaru CVT, especially when paired with like turbocharged engines, like they drive differently. The only time it kind of rears its like CVT-ness is when you really like
Yeah.
step on it.
Floor it. Yeah.
And yeah, and those moments are really few and far between when it comes to daily driving things. Like you know, you don't really run into those situations. And CVTs are just, you know, they're very efficient. Now, when it comes to repairs and stuff like that, again, I don't have enough knowledge in that, and you know, because I only drive press cars. I don't have to take cars to the shop.
That's somebody else's problem.
Yeah, that's a good problem.
The
to
CVT
have.
didn't
But I mean,
work when I
it's-
jumped it. Why?
Yeah, but it's true. Like
As
people will
someone with
immediately pour fire on Nissan for having a CVT, and then in the same
Yeah.
breath they'll be like, "The new Honda Accord is so good," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?" You know?
They as someone with a 2013 Nissan sitting in my driveway that is my mother-in-law's, it's a Juke with a CVT. I can definitely
God.
confirm that CVT is hot garbage, and no one should ever drive that car ever, and all of them should be recycled.
Yeah,
They're
100%.
terrible.
It's a mother-in-law car because my mother-in-law had a first-gen Rogue
It totally is.
with the CVT. It was a first-gen Rogue with the CVT. I drove it for her one time down to the beach because she was staying in the beach house with us, and she was riding with my wife and our kids and stuff. And so I said, "Well, I'll drive your Rogue down." It was the most wretched piece of garbage. Like I the whole time I was driving it, I was like, I don't know if I've ever immediately been so repulsed by a car, like just getting in and driving it. And I was like, this is one of the worst experiences I've ever had in a car.
And that's the Rogue. It's like 800 to 900 pounds heavier than the
Right.
Juke. So it's
Right.
going down the road going, please
Yeah.
kill me.
So-
like, it's
horrible.
awful. So bad.
So what is the most annoying thing about CVTs? And this is going to feed into my next point. But Jack, what is the most annoying thing about a CVT in your opinion?
You know, the modern ones, the current ones, I would say there's not much that annoys me, like that I'm immediately like bothered by, like in some of Honda's products and stuff like that. I think it's just that, like you said earlier, when you do need to summon more power from the engine, you get it's not even necessarily the revs, it's just unnatural. Like it just, our bodies, our minds are sort of conditioned to this stepping of a transmission, whether you've driven a stick or whether you've just grown up with automatics. You're just sort of preconditioned to it. And I feel like I also would, and maybe this is just me, I would love to know if you guys agree with this. I also feel like no matter how much power is behind that CVT, it always, just in the way it operates, feels like there's not enough power behind that CVT. Like, you know, when you step on a car in an automatic and it drops 2 or 3 gears, or you downshift a manual, even in a little econo box, you're like, wee, yeah, you know, and it like you get that little. But in a CVT, you get the wee, and it just you know?
It feels like
and I'm
a
like,
boat.
oh no.
So it's the sound, right? It's really So I don't know if you've test driven the Lexus UX before.
Yeah.
But that one has this thing called active sound control, or some 3-letter thing. But so it has a CVT or IMT or intelligent automatic transmission. But as part of that, it will feed in shifting sounds into the cabin. So, and I've tested this. With it off, it sounds like a normal CVT where you step on it, the engine operates at the highest RPM that it's happy at, and then the gears kind of step upwards, you know, in an infinite fashion. till the car gets moving faster. But when you turn on that active sound control, it will mask the sound as if it's like as if it's going through the gears. It is wild, but because it kind of feeds in that fake sound, it changes your perception, and it's not as annoying sounding as a CVT. But it's all fakery. But it kind of takes your.
I like to think that they call that active sound suppression, and you guys can put those 3 letters together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up CVTs.
Yeah.
If I were to own a car company, that's what I would call it.
Yeah.
Put that in the EVs, like that have the fake engine noise,
Just get the fuck out. Just go away. Don't ever do that. It's an EV. Like, you're not fooling it. Like when Dodge did the whatever that noise thing was with the Charger EV.
Frat Sonic exhaust, because I just looked it up for real.
It's just like, you're not it's not like the people who want that, you're not fooling, right? Like the people are like, well, I want my engine. Oh, hey, look, it sounds like a phonograph from like the 1800s.
Right.
It's like, you're not fooling anyone, so just get rid of it. Like, what the best high performance electric vehicles, just, we're electric, we're here, just deal with it. And the manner in which they accelerate and just dust anything with an internal combustion engine because of traction and all that, it's like, that's its own sense of drama. Do not add in fake, because it could be a great car. You give me, it has that fake noise, or it does this, or it does that. It's an immediate, and again, I am 0.001%, or I represent 0.001% of the car buying community, but it's just like, nah, it's ruined. Like, I hate fake. I hate it.
Are you saying you don't want your car to play a Hans Zimmer symphony every time you accelerate, like in BMW, where it's like they've got the soundtrack by Hans Zimmer, and it's like, whoa,
No, I prefer to hear
That actually sounds kind of awesome, to be put on it. It's probably not good in practice or in execution, but it sounds really freaking cool.
I mean,
I always feel like it's like Planet Earth or something. It's like you accelerate, you get the music, and then it's like the crocodile has joined the waterhole or something.
David Attenborough in the background.
Like a TV show has just started. Yeah, yeah.
That would be very.
The middle-aged American male has.
If you could put your GPS on David Attenborough mode, I would do that in a second.
Turn right at the next intersection.
And if you look to your
so good.
You've missed your turn.
Like you miss your turn. The middle-aged American male is not known for following directions. He has just missed the turn he was supposed to take.
It's amazing he was ever allowed to reproduce.
Speaking of which, the female of the species is pointing that out right now.
Oh, exactly.
No, it's just like, I don't know. Again, I'm not a good representation of your car buyer, right? Like, my daily is so not a good daily. It's not even funny, right? But I love the fact that the exhaust noise, real. The noise coming from the engine, real. The fact that I can hear the supercharger, the blow-off valve, all of that stuff. All real, nothing pumped into the cabin. I know that it like that for me, like the stuff when they start pumping, sure, it adds a sense of occasion to not me, but like it just like, come on, like just make it right from the start. It's
yeah. Well, what they did with that Fratsonic exhaust, like it's not an actual speaker. It's like it's supposed to be like wind. It's supposed to be like how a pipe organ works. But the way that they did it, I mean, apparently they've redone it, but we don't have anything new on what it sounds like yet. But like in concept, it's very cool. Like if they can do something where a car is moving and that movement and the wind and the friction makes a noise that comes out the back that's like cool. That it doesn't even have to be like a normal car engine noise. It could be something that's just like really cool. That would be great. And I love the engineering and the thinking behind that. But when they turned it on, like it just sounded like someone stuck one of those cheapo as an Amazon speakers up underneath the bottom and just turned it on and it was like, beer. It just sounded horrible. And I'm like, this doesn't sound like anything. It doesn't even sound like, I'd rather an EV. I'd rather just the silence. I don't even want this. This is terrible. So, I don't know. We'll see what they come out with, but
That's what you
Yeah,
said.
I
It's
still-
like it should be to itself, right? It shouldn't be trying to be something else, because mildly intelligent people like myself will see right through it. You know, have it be its own thing. If
Right.
like an EV can make a noise that's based on some sort of mechanical action that's really happening, like have it be its own thing. That's stop trying to like, you know, with the fake manuals that I think, what is it, Toyota is doing with the electric stuff. Like, no, like EVs have their own thing. That's what they're good at. If stop trying to insert something because like people like us are like, save the manuals. Yes, we like that because we're actually rowing through gears, not like, hey, this is like it. Almost, it feels like a video game, like, right? Like it just doesn't feel real. It's not. I don't know. I should probably get off of this because I'm getting to the point where it's just like semi-coherent and just rambling. And
I think
My favorite part of that whole thing was when you called yourself moderately intelligent. That was great. That was exactly the category I'd put you in. Also myself, but
to thine own self be true, Gregson.
I mean, I'd put myself there too, but I just liked it when you said that. That was great.
Why do you think I partnered with
Yeah,
you guys? I needed someone to fill the intelligence gap.
oh
I mean, I think if we're gonna go into that realm of like fake gearing, we got to do what Koenigsegg is doing with the new CC850. I mean, the engineering behind that is just ridiculous and wild. But I mean, that's what I imagine like the next generation of thing to be for like enthusiasts. You get an automatic, you get paddle shifters if you really want, but it's not like 100% real. It's not a real manual, but like if you're going towards that realm of efficiency and futurism, and obviously like a manual transmission, it's old technology at this point. Automatics are better in almost every way other than engagement and fun. Like they're better commuter cars, what have you. But like the way that Koenigsegg did the CCX 850 or CC 850X or whatever it's called, with that like dual transmission, that's where I feel like companies need to go. So you can have one but also have the other, because we live in a society where we're like, we want everything right now, everything everywhere all at once, I need it. Like that's, to me, that's like the best of both worlds. You get sort of a commuter transmission or feel, and then you can also still have the fun if you really wanted to.
It also sort of fills the futurism aspect of transmissions. If you think about like the history of transmissions, right? You think back to like the early Model Ts and stuff like that, where they had like a 2-speed lever and you shove it forward or backwards to change the transmission. And you think, okay, well, we got all the way up into the 50s, 60s time frame where we had the manual transmission, and it started as a 3-speed, and then a 4-speed, and then a 5-speed, then a 6-speed. Now Porsche and Corvettes had 7 speeds in the previous generation, and you're like, okay, but the whole idea of continuing technology, well, that ended back in the 60s when the automatic transmission was invented, and then the automatic gave way to the single clutch and the dual clutch and like all that kind of stuff. And it's like we're still pining for the manual. And if you think about it sort of logically, and I say this as someone who enjoys driving manual transmissions, but if you think about it logically, you're like, there's not a single other transmission in the history of the automobile that we're like, man, it would be great if my car had that 2-speed lever in it that people used back in 1920. Like, no, it's just the manual. The manual's the only one that we pine for. And so it's kind of like, to your point about the Koenigsegg, it's like, no, we should also celebrate the advancement of the transmission. And we celebrated the Porsche PDK, and we celebrate, stuff like that. Now Koenigsegg is coming up with a new idea, and like what's going to take it to the next level. And I don't know, there's part of me that kind of likes the idea that if I was in my 50s and I wanted to buy a good manual, I go back and I find a, broken down BMW, E46, 3 Series or something. And I'm like, remember this was fun. But like, I don't demand that BMW in 2032 comes out with, I'm like, where's the manual, BMW? And they're like, look, dude, it's 2032. Get over it. All right. Get over it. There's plenty of cars out there with manuals.
Nope.
Well, that's a good point.
2032,
go ahead.
if it has an ICE engine in it, I demand it has a manual option, even though I am
Yeah.
just I mean, not for nothing. If they continue
I
with
forgot
their
about
current,
that aspect.
if they continue with their current design, I could give less of a crap about what it
Oh,
transmissions and
dude.
it's like you could put in something that is the most insanely engaging. People are gonna love this. If it still looks like that with that, no, like sorry, bye bye.
Oh man, we could do a whole evening podcast on BMW's fall from grace in terms of design. You know, you're
Oh my
like,
gosh, like
Oof.
That's bad.
I just wanted to be. I just
Yeah.
want to be in the meeting when they were like, "Okay, so the new 3 and 4 series. What do we think, guys?" Seriously? Like, no, this is a terrible idea. Okay, we're gonna make it.
Yeah.
I think it went something like this, where it was just like, so guys, piggy nostrils are very in. What do you think?
Yeah. It was like it's the pigs from Angry Birds. That's all I can see.
Yeah.
That's all I can see is the pig
Yes.
from Angry Birds. And it's like some 50-year-old BMW designer was like, "Do you guys remember an app called Angry Birds?" And you're like, "Yo, dude, that hasn't been popular in a decade." And they're like, "What if the cars look like that?" You know, and you're like, "What?"
We're out of it's out of copyright. Don't worry about it. We can copy the
Yeah.
design. It's great. It's
Right.
gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
Someone else is like some guy named Dieter was like, "Have you seen what Hyundai and Kia are doing?" And he's like, "Shut up, Dieter. We're making it look like a pig."
Yeah.
They already stole our lead designer before. We got to go in a different direction.
Yeah, exactly. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre to me. Like, you know, and then they're doing that while Mercedes EVs look like melting bars of soap.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
It's like I took my soap and I put it in the shower and I forgot about it for a few weeks, and then
Yeah.
that's a Mercedes EV.
I don't. Yeah, and I've said this like 1,000 times on this podcast / stream. It's just like, just because it's an EV doesn't mean it has to look like an alien space frog. It can look like a normal car. You just make it look like a normal car. And I get that, like, they're supposed to be slippery and efficient. But you know what else is slippery and efficient? A lot of sedans that are pretty much normal looking. They all have
Yeah.
a drag coefficient within like 1/10 or 2/10 of all the EVs. And I'm just like, you could make it look like that and it'll look fine.
Yeah.
Like, just do that, please. Tesla Model 3, looking at you. You look horrible. Please change. Like, but also all the new BMW stuff. Like, come on. Did you guys talk about the Consumer Reports rankings yet, by any chance?
No.
Oh,
No,
no,
that's
no.
It's a great segue into that because BMW is tops on that list.
That's wild.
They build the best. Like, I just made a reel on this yesterday. I know this was kind of a news thing we wanted to talk about, but like, they literally came out with the best brands list, or which car brands make the best vehicles. They do it every year, and the list goes, and I quote, top 5: BMW with 82, Subaru with 80, Porsche with 80, which went up 11 spots, the biggest jump. Honda and Lexus, and then Mini, Kia, Mazda, Toyota, Hyundai, top 10. So BMW, this is the second year in a row, BMW and Subaru top 2.
I could see Subaru just from the loyalty aspect. People love Subarus.
Yeah.
They love
Yeah.
their Subarus.
They really do.
BMW, I don't know. Don't get it.
Oh, so they give it. There's a couple of different things here. There's
crossing
road-
consumer reports off of trusted sites. Continue.
Yeah, gonna need to put a fake news badge on all Consumer Reports.
I mean, what
reporting
consumers
now
were
on.
they interviewing? Fucking blind people?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. This list doesn't include styling, which I'm sure it would make BMW be near the bottom.
I mean, I guess if
But-
they're not including that and you voluntarily buy those things, you're going to be fiercely defensive when anybody talks about it. So
True. I mean, there are some redeeming.
no.
There are some redeeming vehicles.
No.
I think we were talking about this the other day. Look, 5 Series looks great. X5 also looks great. I mean,
But the X5 is still hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of models that BMW puts out that are still actually attractive. I think mostly because they've been model refreshed and not into this new design language that they've got going on.
Well, I drove the BMW M340i, which is not technically an M car, but
Yeah.
it's it's an awesome 3 Series, and also the the M cars have sort of like leaped into a totally different league compared to the previous M cars. Like the M340i is like, I mean, I think it's kind of like an old M3 really, but today's M3 is just like so much better. But like the styling of the M340i is much more reserved than the M3s and M4s, and you have an actual reasonable kidney beam grill, and the rest of it still looks like that classic 3 Series. I think it's a gorgeous car. Yes, it doesn't look like the BMW XM, which looks like an Angry Bird, or like the BMW iX, which is again looks like an Angry Bird, but the bar of soap version of that.
Is that the one with the
again,
really vertical nostrils?
yes,
Oh,
yeah,
That's
great
that's
EV
tough.
though. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, but yeah, visually speaking, it's not great.
What's the old adage, right?
Yeah.
If you don't turn around after parking your car and take a look at your car, you bought the wrong car. It's just like, no. Like, it's like, okay, this is great from right here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but like, what is
That's
it?
about it.
I think I read somewhere. What is it? The current M3 is bigger in size than like the first 2 or 3 generations of M5
Yeah.
or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I
just
believe
like
that.
the overall
Yeah.
sizing and the capability and stuff like that. Like,
Well, what's the legendary ones? The E39, right? The E39 M5
Yep.
is the
M5,
legendary
yeah.
one, which I've always thought is one of the most beautiful sedans
100%.
ever made. And I'm like, if you
100%.
parked the M3 next to that, it would look like a bloated mess. Like it would just,
Not
you
even
know, you
fair.
just like it was so elegant. Like I remember, do you guys remember the BMW driver ads that they made?
Oh yeah,
The short
with Clive,
films? Yeah,
yeah,
Clive
yeah.
Clive
Owen.
Owen.
Dude, the M5 one was directed by Guy Ritchie and guest starred
Yeah.
Madonna. And that was one of the, I watched that and I was 21, 22 when those came out. I watched those things like 100 times at Georgia on my new DSL internet or whatever. Like it was like not dial up, right? It was like my new cable internet or whatever. But I watched those things like 100 times and I was like, these are the coolest freaking cars. Like that M5 was the coolest car. And then to see 25 years on, like what it's become, and you're just like, what? Like what happened?
It's like trying to stand out for the sake of trying to stand out. When like
Exactly.
BMW in general, for a large chunk of its history, was that classic Germanic sedan. Pretty much all of them, right? Like BMW, Mercedes. I mean, Audi was kind of the one that was doing things a little bit, out of the quote unquote 3 box, design wise or what have you. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it was them catching up because, Lexus came along and these other luxury manufacturers, and the styling was unlike what we saw with the Germans, right? It's like, well, shoot, we got to catch up. So I don't know if it was, people seem to like the Hourglass for Lexus. Grills are in general are just getting out of control. Like just like the BMW grills, I actually didn't like the Hourglass. It's grown on me. On most models that were designed with the Hourglass in mind, I think look really good now. The models where they just sort of plastered it on were but like, I don't know, man. Like there's still a play, and I think that's where like a Genesis is coming in, and like their stuff is not outlandishly designed exterior wise, right?
No,
it
No.
has
their
that
whole lineup looks
Very
really
beautiful.
good.
that
GV70 is gorgeous.
absolutely, and
Yeah.
it has that elegance to it that it's not trying to stand out. It's understated luxury, and if I was in the market for a luxury type vehicle or one of those type, I'd start with Genesis and then go elsewhere.
Well, they're dynamically excellent too. Like Hanson, have you driven the GV70? Like
I have.
Yeah, that would. I
It's
remember
excellent.
the first time I drove it. It was one of those few cars that like I got in, pulled out of my neighborhood, and in the first mile, I was like, "This is a damn good car. Like this is a really good car. Like you could just feel it. Like it just felt." And that's the GV70, the SUV. I was like, "This is such a good car."
Yeah.
I feel
And
like
earlier we were talking about like heads up displays, about like how
Yeah.
that could be the one thing that people are like, wow, this is amazing. That GV70 has some really cool tech inside.
Mhm.
A lot of it's not like, it's really just for the wow factor. But the one that really stood out to me was the fact that their speedometer had a 3D effect to it.
Yeah.
So the needles look like they're just floating in front, completely useless, but you're like, that's cool. I've
Yeah.
never seen that before, and I
Yeah.
could buy it in a car that is like less expensive than the Mercedes and BMW version of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that
But
one a lot. And I really like the G80 a lot too. The G80 is the
yeah,
sedan is really good.
yeah. Chad, you were talking about like the hourglass grills on Lexus, and 'cause the one that I just drove is the new Lexus GX, which I am super excited about. But the old
Review out
GX, which
now on
is, yes,
shiftinglanes.youtube.go watch it.
absolutely, go check it out. It's one of our better videos right now on our channel, so that's great. But that's an example where uh, form starts to affect function, because the Lexus GX is kind of like if you wanted a third row SUV, a 3-row SUV, that was kind of like the only option from Lexus before you go into like the Lexus LX. And but it was also an awesome off-roading vehicle. Like, I think a lot of people bought it just because they wanted a third row, but a subset of people wanted to buy it for that off-road capability. So, initially it was built as like a nice off-road vehicle. I mean, the bones are still like a great off-road vehicle, but I think Lexus wanted to appeal to more people, and that's when they started having like these really large grills for like some of their other cars, like the RX. That's a very hot seller. And then they've kind of applied that to the GX as well. Like, if you notice, from like the GX 470, and then going on to the first few years of the GX 460, like the hourglass grill got bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where the approach angle, so that's the angle between kind of like the front fender and like your wheel, it's kind of like an important off-road angle. The bigger that is, the more capable your off-road vehicle is. Well, that approach angle has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller because the grill has gotten bigger and bigger. You've got like a bigger chin. So it's like, and if you look into like a lot of the overlanding, the people who overland, they would chop up these bumpers so they could regain some of that approach angle.
Like
But
that one we drove. Remember the one we drove?
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a really wild
That's awesome.
version of the GX 460. But the new GX 550, it's like they kind of went back to their roots a little bit, because now the grill is a lot smaller. It's much more presentable, in my opinion, and therefore you regain some more of that approach angle, some more of that function. So I think
What do you think of the new version, the integrated one on the RX and the TX?
I think it's
How it's
kind
like
of
kind of melds with the
yeah,
bumper, now?
it's the influence of the EV, I think, right?
Yeah.
Because EVs were really hot like 6 months ago, up to
6 months ago.
Yeah, and
Yesterday.
I think yeah.
I guarantee
And
you that design was signed off on like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
yeah. It's like all of these cars are, like the redesigned Model S, when it came out like several years ago. It eliminated that grill. The first Model S had like a huge fake looking grill, right? Because that they wanted to kind of assimilate to other car designs, but they didn't really need to have a huge grill because there's no engine there. You don't need that aspiration. And then now it's like the other way. EVs were kind of like what people wanted, and like, how do we hide these grills now? Let's make it more integrated, as in the RX and the TX. So
I'm going to go the opposite direction.
yeah. I mean, these designers, they try to kind of like catch on trends and stuff like that, and sometimes it doesn't work like the stuff that we've seen with BMWs.
Well,
And
Hey, to be fair, we were crapping on BMW, but they've been here before because we all remember the Bangle butt when Chris
it's
Bangle
true.
redid the 7 Series with the humpback, and then he did the
Yeah.
5, and then he did the 3, and the flame surfacing, which just looked awful.
I feel like I'm the only person on earth that actually enjoys Chris Bangle's designs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they're weird.
Yeah.
I'm also a person that likes weird stuff, like in cars. Like if I'm gonna
Thank
choose
you for
between a
clarifying.
911 and a Lotus, yes, I like weird things in cars only. If I'm choosing between a Lotus and a 911, 911's a wonderful car. It's the benchmark of every sports car ever for the last 50 years. I'm probably choosing a Lotus because it's just weird. It's like no one chooses the Lotus against the
Yeah.
911. So like for me, I go to
There's
like
a
the street
reason
stuff. Why I
for
like
that.
Volvo. Shut up, go away.
just because
Like, how
Elliot said you could have
gorgeous
one
is
doesn't mean
the-
that.
That new Amira, though, is gorgeous.
Oh yeah, so that's a fitting way to send Lotus out on the ICE Eve engines. That thing is
Oh,
tremendously designed. It looks like they put 20 years of design into that one car. Honestly, it
Yeah.
looks that good. But like that's why I like Volvos because it's quirky. They're weird. They're
Mhm.
cool in a way that like not a lot of people understand, which I think is kind of interesting. And that's what I like. So I like that weird aspect, and that's why I like the Bangles designs because they were out there and they sort of ushered in a little bit of like sort of the new wave of design across a lot of different automakers because. Even into the early 2000s and the latest 2005, 2006, where we were still getting this boxy stuff from the 80s that was just rounded box. And then Bangle came in and designed a whole bunch of stuff, and along with a lot of other great designers, Ian Callum with the Gaydon era and the Aston Martin and Jaguar stuff. Like, but those sort of designers sort of brought like the new era into cardom, if you will, with also still having all of the safety regulations. They were working with what they had, and I think that is a very cool aspect that a lot of people miss. Is Bengals designs weren't great. Like I'll admit that a lot of them were just kind of flat out ugly. But I like them in the sense that they were different, and they sort of went against that. Like look at any Toyota or Lexus from 2002 through 2008. They are all super boring. All of them. They're great cars, and they will last until the end of time.
Hold on. You said 2002 to 2008?
Not all of them, Chad. The ones that not all of them, but like look at any like
look at
GS, look at any Camry, look at any Avalon. They're all super boring.
Counterpoint, the 01 to I think what was it? 06 IS.
The IS being an exception, sure. But like a lot of like the like when you think of Lexus of the mid 2000s, what you're not thinking of an IS.
Yes, I am.
That's like the
I'm 100% thinking of
you
the
are,
IS.
sure.
If you're playing Gran
are.
Turismo, if I was
Yeah,
on Gran
like-
Turismo,
like-
I had
like
an
we're all-
Altezza because it was the
Yeah,
Altezza.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Like we're all thinking of that, but like the general
the
consumer is
Beams
thinking of that
engine.
like super boring GS, right? So like
Yeah.
that, and then you see like a 7 Series rolling down the road, and you're like, oh, all right, that's pretty cool. Like,
Which
to
is
me, that-
ironic because the first GS was so wild looking. Remember
Yes.
in the late 90s, the first GS came out.
Yeah,
and it
with,
looked
like,
crazy. I think
the
it was a
quad
Giugiaro
headlights.
design. Yeah.
Yeah, they
It
were
was-
super cool.
Yeah, or it was
Biggie
the
was
second
rapping
one.
about 'em.
Maybe it was the first. Maybe it was the second one. Maybe the first one was the boring one. The second one was the wild one. I think.
Yeah.
Hey, they
But
came,
Either
they came
way,
with a
Notorious
2J.
B.I.G.
So.
was rapping about it, so it was worth.
Yeah, it
was,
did have
was
two,
up
it
there.
had a 2J and the SC. The
Yeah.
SC had the 1J.
Yeah.
The SC got the 1J everywhere but here. We got the 2J NA, and then we got the 1UZ V8 instead of.
Oh! I thought it had the 1J and the V8. It was a 2J.
It was naturally aspirated.
Naturally
2J.
aspirated 2J.
You probably
Gotcha.
think we got the 1J because literally everyone does that swap.
Well, it's
Yeah.
it's the same. It's the same thing with the Mark III Supra. Is that
Yeah.
we got the 7M GTE, which is not a bad engine until you start putting a little. Like it doesn't. It's not like when you think of Toyota Straight Six, you're like, how much boost? All of it. It had a habit of melting pistons if you weren't careful. But across the world, they got a 1J. The SC, the SC is actually a very funny story, and how it kind of came to be. It was that they put so much engineering, and because this was back when Japan economically was doing phenomenal. It's how we ended up with all of your classic JDM engines. It was like, well, we have the money, we might as well over-engineer the ever-living crap out of these things, right? So they ended up with the Mark IV Supra, but it was great for the time. It was really expensive for a Toyota. I think they were it was beating stuff like Ferraris and braking tests and all this other sort of stuff. And this was even before people realized, like, wait, I can triple the boost and it will be fine. Go on. So they're like, well, crap, I don't know how many people are going to want to buy this at this price point. Why don't we make a luxury version of it? And that's where the SC was spawned. The SC is to the Mark IV Supra what the G35 was to the original 350Z. In that it is effectively the bodywork's different, but it's effectively mechanically the same car. Obviously, all these cars have slight differences, but with the chassis elongated. So you can let's just say hypothetically you were like, Mark IV Supras, they're catching six figures. I don't want to do that. I want to take out the 2J and put in a V8, the 1UZ, for example, right? The SC subframe will, with not a lot of effort, kind of bolt right in. So now you have all your mounting points and all that other sort of stuff in there. But the whole point of it is that it's like, hey, this is our luxury brand. We can justify the expense of this because it has the luxury badge on it.
You just reminded me of, we were talking about design and especially luxury design stuff. You just reminded me of the fact that, has anyone squandered a bigger design lead or win than Infiniti in the early 2000s? Because the G35, the FX45, like those things were sick. Those were sick looking cars. Car. Oh, the G35 sedan, the G35 coupe, the FX SUV with that big V8, like those things were insanely cool. And then it was like Infiniti was like, I got an idea. What if we never do that again?
Let's round everything.
I'll tell you, Infinitis were cool since they came out with the Q45. That first Q45 was super cool. And then they had like the.
it sounded amazing.
Yeah, and what was it? The J20 or was it the I20? That was like basically the British touring car version of.
Like, it was the J, the J.
The J20. I wanted a J20 so badly because I used to.
Yeah, my uncle had one.
British touring cars.
It was so cool.
Awesome. Then it was like them versus Volvo versus Honda, and I'm like, this is the coolest series ever. I want one of these cars, and and then Infiniti was like, man, we're gonna give you this G35. It's basically a 350Z with a way nicer body and a way nicer interior. And we actually had a buddy that had one. Hanson and I used to live with our buddy Keith, who bought a house right out of college, and he had a G35, and he came home with that. I was like, man, this thing is sick. It's like such a cool car. Yeah. And then Infiniti was just like, no, I think we're gonna go that way. And I'm like, no, you should have gone the other way. What are you doing?
260 horsepower at that time was quite a bit. Like it was the first like VQ, kind of run, and it had 260 horsepower. And I remember the coupe. I wanted that coupe so bad. I was like, that coupe is one of the coolest looking kind of premium luxury coupes that I had seen. I mean, really since since the SC or something like that, a couple years earlier, like that coupe had so much presence.
Fun fact.
I may be wrong here, but I think that's on the same foundation as the GTR.
I want to say yes, because in Japan, Infinitis are mostly Nissans.
Yeah.
Like if you look at
there was
the new
a Skyline
Infiniti Q400 or something. Yeah, I was gonna say basically it's the Skylines in Japan.
It was the Skyline over there.
Yeah.
Fun fact: it was that G35 that you spoke of that taught me that, hey, this is the easiest car to drive sideways that I've ever driven up until that point in my life. To be fair, in my defense, I'm not just that jackass friend who hops in the car and goes like, wee. Yeah, he's like, look, you told me to get a manual. What can you have? What kind of fun can you have in a manual? Looked him dead in the eye and I go, this might be a bit extreme. I'm not going to try to wreck your car, but like, we're gonna write like the tires. Are you okay with that? He's like, that sounds like fun. Go for it. And as I'm going sideways, I see him out of the corner of my eye, just death gripping any surface he can get a hold on. And he looks at me and he goes, "That was awesome. You're never driving my car again." I go, "Oh, I already had my fun with it."
Fun fact about that car: it came with 215 section tires on it. By the way, you would think it would have more. Nope, 215s was stock on that car.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, no wonder it was easy to light up. It basically has no tire underneath.
Well, I
it.
don't even mean just the ease of lighting it up, because you don't need a lot of power to light
No,
up
I
even
know.
big tires.
But even sliding
It was
215s
stable.
are like
It was
ideal for that.
The 350, because of that slightly longer wheelbase, it was just easier in the slide itself. Just because the shorter the wheelbase, yeah, it's more nimble, but it's a lot more twitchy. I shouldn't say a lot. It's you know, we're not talking about like a foot here, right? We're talking a few inches. But it was that those things were so cool, because, like, you know, the 350 had been out for a hot minute. People knew that you could get 500 horsepower without really trying. Well, you required a little bit of boost, but it didn't require a lot of boost. And VQs, if you put the right resonator on them, don't sound like hot ass.
But you have
I never
to have
really
the
minded
right
the
one.
sound of the VQ.
Well, it's like the
You need to watch more internet videos, Jack.
it's like a Honda four
Bad.
it's like a Honda 4-cylinder, right? Like, you get that buzz bomby exhaust, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's like 17 landscapers are mowing my yard right now. But you put a good resonator on them and they sound awesome. It's, you know, your typical exhaust stuff, right? Like, I love the way my car sounds, but it has a little bit of a rasp to it. Now, you know, and I don't like rasp. It was one of my biggest complaints when I had the E46 M3. It was like, this is raspy as all hell. The Mustang isn't as bad, but it's like, I don't like rasp. So, like, down the road, once I get through the big mods that I've been sitting on for a year, it's 100% finding out a way to get that sound better, because it's a big thing.
Yeah.
You know, for all of us.
Oh, people
That's
have
why I
such
bought
strong
this.
opinions about that too with exhaust. Like, when I got my exhaust on my C5 Corvette, it's a stock LS1, but I got the Billy Boat bullet system, which is basically just pipes, you know, out the back. And I had so many people comment on the video I made about that. And they're like, "What are you doing about the drone?" And I'm like, "Drone? I prefer to think of it as sustained awesomeness over time. What you call drone,
Yes.
I call just listening constantly, you know?" And I was like, I'm okay with it. It's not a daily. Who cares? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's,
I like to call it a glorious symphony drowning you out with these stupid questions.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, that's why I got this thing. It, like, nobody knows what this is, for one, because that's my favorite part. And then it's the only factory Volvo ever with a baffled exhaust, which is the coolest thing ever to me. So, like, I have an electronic, like, butterfly flap that I have nice kid mode, I have nice neighbor mode, I have
Sissy.
not wake my kids up mode. And then, I know, but then you, like, flick it open, and it's actually pretty loud. Like, the cold start in this thing, like, it will wake up the neighborhood. Like, it's actually pretty decently loud. Not as loud as Chad's, but, like, it's pretty
I
good.
live in basically
And
an amphitheater. Oops.
right, and it's awesome. Like, I love that you can get those cars that have, like, the best of both worlds. But, like, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, what is it? Is it too loud?" I'm just like, no, because I can close the flap, but also, like, I want the noise. I don't make it louder. Like, if I could do a straight pipe, I would, but that's not good for a daily here in New Jersey. So I can't do that. Like, I would be super illegal, and I would have to do that every 2 years, and I'm not interested in that. But, like, yeah, that's not a drone. It's called sustained excellence. I agree. That's awesome.
Hey, just move on down here to the south, where they don't even have emissions in half the counties of the state. They're just like, whatever, who cares? Yeah.
Oh,
What people call rolling coal, they just call pulling away from a green light. Welcome to Georgia.
plants
you know?
crave CO2. I'm putting more into the atmosphere. What more do you want from me?
Yeah.
I like to
trees
think
love
that
it.
your DMV is you just rolling through with, like, big stacks out of a truck, and then the DMV people are just going like, "Hell yeah, brother!" and then just, like,
Yeah.
high five you as you, like, drive through it, and then that's it.
So I
That's what I
live-
like to
I
think of,
live
like,
in,
the South DMVs.
I live in Metro Atlanta, and I live like the counties of Metro Atlanta are all have like emissions and stuff, and I'll have to. But like I literally live on the edge of one of those counties, and if I just moved like 1 mile down the road, I would literally live in a county where you could just pour gasoline out the passenger window, and they'd be like, "Seems fair," you know. It's not a big
That's
deal.
awesome.
Yeah, and I'm just like,
I do
man,
like
I
the
missed the
loosey-goosey nature.
yeah, I missed the boat on that one.
I mean, the fact that you have a Corvette
that.
and not a like literally shaking the glass of your neighbor's cam in it is a little disappointing.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's one of those things that was always I'll get around to it. I'll get around to it, like doing stuff to it. And then when I started getting press cars, and it occurred to me, I actually have it on the battery tender right now because it occurred to me, I was like, I don't remember the last time I actually started this thing up, because it's like time goes by so fast. And then of course, got 2 kids, one's about to graduate high school, and like other one plays super competitive, volleyball. So it's like we're busy all the time. And then I'll just have this string of like months where I have all these press cars, and I'm like, I haven't even driven one of our family cars, like like our Suburban. Now that my wife does the channel with me, like this week we have 2 cars, and so it's like we just have our family
That's cool.
car sitting in the driveway. I don't have a personal car anymore. Like the Corvette was my